right. I need to not play with this like I did last time. Okay, cool. Guys, welcome to this workshop today, BackStage Pass. My name is Kenny Barnwell. If you don't know who I am, I'm actually the author of BackStage Pass, 10 Things to Consider When Becoming a Touring Music Tech. I also just want to briefly thank Jeff Wilson and the amazing folks at the Pinellas Technical College in Clearwater, Florida, that's given us the opportunity to teach this live. I also want to thank my crew coach members for also tuning in on the live stream. What's up, y'all? I'll see y'all on the coaching sessions next Tuesday. But today, the whole point of this class, this workshop, is to complement the book. In the book here, I give you a step-by-step guide, literally how to go with no experience, no connections, and getting on tour working as a touring music tech. I'll explain what a touring music tech is specifically, but here at Pinellas Technical College, you guys are in the stage production program, and you are in the perfect position to leverage what I'm going to share with you today to take your career to the next level. There's a lot of opportunities in the touring realm, and that's what I've done specifically now for about 20 years on the road, which is really, really crazy to think about now since growing up back on a dead-end dirt road in Villa Rica, Georgia. I'll tell you that. Who knew the opportunities that are available to us? But I'm going to share with you what's available to you from a touring career perspective. So, pretty cool stuff. Well, let me just start with this. I'm going to set this down here. What the heck is a touring music tech? Now, the reason why I wanted to present it in such a way as a touring music tech is because there's a word called roadie, and the reason why I don't love the word roadie is because it's such a negative connotation oftentimes. When you think about roadie, you think about sex, drugs, rock and roll, a bunch of silliness, and gone are the days of all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, there's still some craziness that happens on the road with certain genres and certain bands at certain levels, but generally, it's not the case anymore. Years ago when I first started, we didn't have programs like this in colleges because it was that. It was a friend helping the band to figure out how to set up audio and lights, and it was just, it was roadies. It was literally general workers that they didn't care if they got paid. They just wanted to be out there involved in something really, really cool, travel the world, and get paid something to do it. These days, there are roadies still on the road, and a lot of people still attach themselves to that word, roadie, and I'm not necessarily against it, but back when I published this book, I was really trying to reinforce the fact that this is a serious trade. This is a billion, probably trillion-dollar industry, really, and there are productions that are multi-million-dollar productions headed down the road. Now, back in those days, there was multi-million-dollar productions headed down the road getting taken care of by just people helping their friends and the bands. I mean, craziness. And so I've actually actualized a path on being able to not just try to figure out how to help your friend's band get on tour, but how you can go with just wanting to go on tour, and how can you make that happen if you don't really know anybody and you don't have any experience. So that's what we're going to talk about today in this workshop. Cool? Awesome. Okay, pursuing music for a living. This is me. There I am. Line checking a guitar on one of the many arena stages. But man, when I first started, I grew up in a dead-end dirt road in Villa Rica, Georgia, out in the middle of nowhere, and I grew up with deaf parents. My parents can't hear, completely deaf, and really music to me was impressed upon me by my older siblings as well as church, and I just loved music. I fell in love with music. I started playing guitar and drums when I was a kid, and I was like, man, it'd be so cool to do something with music for a living. And fast forward, I'm 18 years old, and I hear about some opportunities to get to work locally in Atlanta, Georgia, doing some events. And I was like, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, you go and you get to set up concerts and events for a living. I'm like, what do you mean? Like they pay you to set up concerts? Like, yeah, man, you get to like go and get to work on the audio and the lighting. And I'm like, what? And get to work with the bands. I'm like, really? Like, this sounds freaking awesome. And that was really about the extent of it at that time. I was just like, I just want to get on the other side of the curtain, right? And everybody that you talk to is like, well, man, you just got to know somebody. I mean, if you know somebody, you're in. And I was like, man, I know a lot of people that supposedly do this stuff, but like I didn't really know anybody that was going to connect me. And so until I met someone, and I will get there. So have you ever thought about like traveling the world? Like you ever thought about touring ever in your as a career option? You ever thought about getting to travel the world and set up concerts, maybe do the Grammys or get to stand on stage at Wembley Stadium, or maybe you're getting to do the festivals that you see in Europe, one of the thousands of festivals, and getting to be a part of maybe Summer Sonic in Japan, or getting to really just travel the world working for artists and getting to set up concerts. I was like, man, that would be a dream to get to do that. And so started my pursuit. Now, obviously I didn't know anybody, but I had the ability at the time to go to the library and get on Google. Google was a thing 20 years ago. And the fascinating thing about getting started in this industry is you just need awareness. You just need to know that these things are an option to you, okay? And that's why I wrote this book, because it blew my mind how somebody like me, which if you don't know my backstory, a little bit about it is I'm a high school dropout. I tried college. Schooling was never for me. Schooling just never was for me. But education, I craved it. I loved education. And I knew that like I could do something technical. I could do something that's really creative and something with music and travel. And that's when I found the music industry. I was working odd and end jobs at the time, and I meet this lady, and she was like, you ever considered setting up the concerts for a living? I'm like, no, and tell me more. And so she told me I could be a stagehand, and all I had to do was reach out to her friend who owns the stagehand company and see if you can get on the call. And I was like, oh, okay. I really didn't understand what she was talking about, but I was like, I'm very interested in definitely setting up concerts. And so I reached out to her friend, and they were like, well, we don't have any opportunities for you at the moment. I was like, okay. So I followed up again, and finally, I get the opportunity to go and work in Atlanta as a stagehand. But then I was Googling the company at the time, and I thought, man, if I didn't know this lady that connected with me about this opportunity, all I really had to do was Google events and crew in Atlanta, and the opportunity was there. And in fact, on the website it says, no experience, apply here. But I didn't know. It's about awareness. And so if you Google is the who you know, right? So you can Google entertainment staffing services and your city, whatever city you're in. You're going to want to put your city and Google local crew, stagehands, touring audio company, touring lighting company. Now, believe it or not, if you Google these keywords, and these are keywords to put in Google, you will actually literally get touring companies that pop up, okay? Backline is a very specialty department. It's all the instruments if you Google backline. And I didn't know it at the time that I didn't need to know anybody. I just needed to know that these career paths were an option, that these types of work was an option. I didn't know about audio engineering or lighting design or any of that stuff back then. But on the other side of getting into the industry, I was like, wow. So if I didn't know anyone and had no connections whatsoever and no experience, I literally could Google any of these terms in my city, and I could find abundant amount of companies, especially in big cities like Atlanta, where they were needing entry-level crew people at every level. Some other non-conventional ways or unconventional ways was you could always go to a show. If you were to go to a concert, you could go to the loading dock areas, and you could sometimes see the trucks and look at the logos. Sometimes literally on the sides of the trucks or the road cases, we'll have a website, we'll have a phone number sometimes of these companies, because you can assume that if these companies are bringing gear and equipment into these venues in your local town, that they're probably also needing the crew, right, to help them set up. And so looking for the company logos on the trucks and the cases. And then if you're bold enough while you're at a show, you could literally go up to the security person there at the side of the stage, or you could see the other crew wearing black walking around the venue, and literally, if you're bold enough, ask them, hey, who might I talk to get to do what you're doing? I would love to be involved in this. Is there somebody that I might be able to talk to? Hey, fortune favors the bold. Let's be honest. You know, that's why you're here showing up today, because you were like, hey, I could potentially do something with this education that they're offering. And so you boldly stepped into this classroom. And it works the same way when finding these opportunities to break into your local market. So here in Clearwater or Tampa, you guys could Google Tampa, Clearwater, event services, event production, local crew, audio, lighting, all of these companies that are here locally. Now, you guys being in this class at Pine Hills Technical College have a wealth of resource that I did not have. But what I wanted to teach you guys today is assume you don't have Jeff and his proximity and the power of this class. Because this is a very powerful situation you guys are in. You might not realize this, or maybe you do. But I didn't have that back then. I just knew that I needed to figure out a way that I could share this with someone else to where they could take my advice and move into this as well, because it changed my life. So these are some of the unconventional ways, and you have to get bold when it comes to asking. And so if you don't know anybody in the industry, if you didn't have a Jeff and you were watching this right now, you now know who to contact. You now know how to find the who, right? You know that you could go into Google, you could put in the keywords, and you could literally connect with the right local companies that could potentially bring you on and start you into an entry point into this career. It's very, very powerful stuff. Most people say, well, I just don't know anybody. It's who you know. And that is not the case, because now you know you got it. You have the key. Google your city, put in the keywords for crew, local crew, stagehands, audio, lighting, event production, event crew. These are all keywords that you can use. There are companies of every size in your town right now that need crew at any given moment. And because of the way the crewing world works, with a lot of people are not necessarily reliable, they don't show up sometimes. You know, there's a lot of fluidity when it comes to turnover. A lot of people are moving up and moving on, seeing better opportunities. That means there's always a constant need. Now, this is just about awareness for you. I didn't have this awareness when I first started. I just had one person saying, hey, call my friend and they can connect you. Well, you might be saying to me, well, Kenny, you knew somebody, you had a connection. But what I didn't realize at the time was I didn't need her connection. All I needed was to Google stagehands, Atlanta, and that company would have popped up. And then if you go to their website and you look how to apply, it says, no experience, question mark, apply below. It's sometimes that simple, you know. We overcomplicate things. We think that there's this big veil to getting to backstage, and that's not the case. So now you've got the who you know. You can start as a stagehand, which is a great way to do it. The reason why I say start as a stagehand is because there are other ways to start. There's entry level into these production companies. There's entry level into an audio or a lighting company. There's always a need for somebody to sweep floors and load cases, and there's always a need for entry level. But there's a position called a stagehand that gives you a massive opportunity, because as a stagehand, you are a 1099 worker, which means that you're your own business. So let's just say that you've got class, you've got your other job, but you want to part-time as a stagehand. You can say yes to the things that you can do, and know the things that you can't do so you can actually get involved in this with as little time as you have available. And so it gives you experience in all areas of production. That's the cool thing about being a stagehand locally is you'll get to work at a high level doing audio, lighting, video, staging, pyro, automation, all of these different areas of production. You'll get your hands on all of this stuff. It's very, very powerful. Proximity around the tour pros to learn. I work with local crew every city around the world. You know, I'm 20 years in. Anytime I travel around, I get stagehands that I work with, and those stagehands have access to me that day. Should they desire to ask questions or inquire or anything like that. You literally are working around the top professionals in the world. Now, you might be thinking, well, they're busy. I don't want to bug them. Yeah, don't bug them. There's going to be a time and place, but you're around them. You have an opportunity to absorb, right? I wasn't going to say this, but I'll say this. A friend of mine's granddad was a physicist, and he always said that exposure always leads to some type of contamination. Well, if you're around, that's a bad way to put this, but if you're around the proximity of these tour pros, you will, chances are, have that rub off on you. It's really, really powerful. It's paid training. You literally get paid to work. You get paid to get experience. You get paid to relationship build and network build. You get paid to close the skills gap. They're literally paying you to learn more about your craft. Crazy. And then during this time, you'll get a better opportunity to figure out your pathway and your specialty, which we'll talk more about, and of course, develop relationships. It's very important to figure out your specialty, and being a stagehand will allow you to do that because you get to try out all of it. You know, a friend of mine that I toured with out with a band named Chris Isaac, our lighting designer, comes up to me one day, and I just published the book, and he's like, Kenny, I read your book, and man, I wish I would have had this when I first started. I'm like, why? He goes, well, to be honest with you, I got an audio degree, and then after school, to get my audio degree, I had to go and put it to work, so the only thing that was available was a stagehand gig. And he goes, as a stagehand, I learned about lighting, and then I realized I have a passion for lighting, not so much audio, and so I started to work in lighting to pay for my audio degree. And he's like, if I would have just known that I could have came in as a stagehand first before not wasting, but getting off with his time to chase an audio degree when really he loved lighting. But who knew? So that's another powerful thing about getting in and getting started is it might save you years of going this way when you really wanted to go this way, if that makes sense. And of course, developing professional relationships. So that's why it's important as a stagehand. Okay, so this one is a very touchy subject. I'm not going to go there on a political aspect, okay? The union versus non-union, that's not what I'm talking about here. Our whole mission of this workshop is to get on tour, right? We want to get on tour. That means we need as little resistance as possible, all right? And the unions, now you might find yourself, if you're watching this workshop, maybe some of the crew coach members that are watching this later, you might go, well, Kenny, man, I live in New York or I live in Chicago and all we have is unions, you know? Like I grew up in Atlanta area where it was a right to work state, so we had a choice. We didn't have to go union. And the reason why this matters is because, again, remember, we're trying to get on tour. Well, the way the union operates is they give you a little bit higher dollar rate to start, which is appealing, right? However, they immediately slow your progress down of growth. And the reason why they do this is because they want you to spend a lot of time, most of the time, years sometimes, of earning it. They want you to become an apprentice. They want you to be dictated by the seniority hierarchy of the union to grow. And boy, I was like not about to be put in a box. I was already passionate. I'm like trying to do everything. I'm trying to figure out how to learn and grow. And I had friends of mine that go, well, Kenny, man, I know you're only making $11 an hour with this company, but like come join the union. We start at 16. I'm like, man, that sounds awesome. And they're like, yeah, man, like over the next 2 years, you can like come in and be an apprentice, and then eventually you'll get to be the audio helper or the lighting helper, and then you can move into actually, like maybe in a 5-year plan, you can like move up to that next level beyond apprentice. I'm like, 5 years? I'm like, dude, I'm not interested in a 5-year plan. I'm interested in what can I do now to grow. And the problem with the union seniority is it immediately blocks drive. It immediately blocks passion with the supposed security of things. And the reality is you're only secure in your growth. There's always another level. The money I was making at the time was fine. You know, 1050, 1150, sometimes I'd make 15, 16. Mind you, this was 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, things were way different from an inflationary standpoint. But point being is, it's enough, you know. Like sometimes we think, oh man, I just need to go chase that extra couple dollars. But really, if you focus on growth and getting on tour, then you'll see why the union opportunities can be restrictive. Now, non-union opportunities, this is what's cool about the non-union opportunities. They do not restrict your growth. They promote with ambition. They promote with intention and ambition and drive and passion. What I mean by that was I was very passionate about doing any and everything. And in fact, I would be like, hey, I'll do truck loading. I will climb up on the truss. This was back in the early days where you would climb up on the truss and hand manually focus the lighting. I was like, I'm willing to do anything and everything. Well, my friends that went to the union route, they weren't even allowed to really touch much of the stuff. They weren't allowed to touch it yet. They were years away from being able to even touch that stuff. Well, as a non-union opportunity, as a non-union stagehand, I was able to freely learn with the gear because of ambition. They would rather have somebody that cared working and representing their clients as a stagehand than just somebody who was there for the paycheck, you know? So immediately, within a short amount of time, I got to learn how to drive forklifts, boom lifts, scissor lifts. I got to learn how to climb and shoot truss spot. I remember one time I got to climb on top of the truss for a WWE wrestling match wearing a flame suit, you know, shooting truss spot over the stage with pyro coming up all around me as a stagehand within a matter of months. Had I gone union, I would have never had that opportunity. It would have taken years to get there. And I don't know where my drive would have been within those years to get on tour. At this time, I was wanting to go and move forward and potentially tour. You see? And so I'm going to give you this information with you to decide what you want to do with it, but we're trying to get on tour. From a political standpoint, I have no dog in that fight. None whatsoever. I am focused on growth. And in growth, you can't have restrictions. You need to be able to stretch and push and pull and bend and have no restrictions. And so my experience with non-union company was they gave me all the opportunities to learn, to grow, and to make mistakes and to fail and literally move towards touring. So take that information with what you will. But that is the value of the differences. And a lot of it's mindset too. A lot of it is just an entitlement mindset. Like, I don't feel entitled to anything but opportunity that I want to earn. That's it. And that's what the non-union opportunities gave me. So figuring out your path. That's me speaking at a touring career conference. By the way, this touring career, by the way, it is an actual trade. Like, in the touring world, this is the TCW conference that I was speaking at, Touring Career Workshop Conference. They've done it for 11 years straight. We have the opportunity to win CMA awards, Emmys. We have the opportunity to win Grammys as crew people on tour because we support these artists and support these albums. So when I say that this is a career, it's a serious trade. It is not just like the old days of roadies where you're just helping the bands, you know? But one important thing that you have to do in order to get on tour is you have to figure out your path. Tours do not just hire general capable workers. They just don't do it. Tour managers, production managers, they can't figure out where to place you, you know? Like, you might say, man, I want a tour. Well, doing what? There's a lot of roles on tour. And so that's why working locally in your town, entry level, at a full production company or as a stagehand will help you narrow it down. Like I talked about my friend that wished he would have went stagehand earlier to figure out lighting before he got his audio degree, because you have to figure out your path. you know? They're not going to be like, hey, we're looking for a lighting person. Oh, you've done audio before? Can you do lights? Perfect. It doesn't work like that. And so it's important for you to figure out your path. The first thing that you really need to know is the direction at which you're going actually at these venues. So let's assume that you've not gotten to work yet and you're just learning this to figure out the steps. Well, let's just bring you up to speed on what that actually looks like in a venue setting. So the directions that you're going to go when you get into a venue, this is your stage directions. And so I'll just kind of show you here while I'm on stage is me, I'm on stage. And so to my left is stage left. To my right is stage right. I'm standing down stage. That's up stage. Behind me is upstage. If I was sitting in your position, it would be house left, house right, because you guys are in the house of the venue. So house left, house right. So now that you have a little bit of directions when you're in the venue, the reason why this matters is because when you work as a local crew in local production, they're going to say, hey, can you push this case upstage left? Can you run this out to front of house? Can you push this downstage right? Can you place this upstage center? This is just the stage vernacular that you're going to learn. This is your new language, okay? So now that you got that direction, let's learn a little bit about the terms of the actual show schedule. So you're in the know. You've got your load in, which is loading in and setting up the gear. You've got your sound check, which is different than a line check, by the way. If you know what a line check is when you check the lines of all the equipment, but a sound check is an actual rehearsal of the actual show. And then there's the show call for all of us, which is the people that are involved in the show. There's sometimes as a stagehand, by the way, like I mentioned, I got to shoot Trust Spot in a flame suit. Well, there are other show call positions. You might get to be a stagehand that helps with what's called the kabuki, which is like the drape drop. You might be a part of the stagehand crew that gets to help load the bands on and off stage, right? Getting to be a part of that movement. That's a show call. And then there's the load out or the strike, which is pretty obvious what that is, right? You load the gear out, you strike it, put it back in the truck, and get ready for the next show. All right, so I want to tell you about some of the tour positions here, so just so you can see of the opportunities that are actually available to you. This is some of them, but I want to hyper focus on the ones that are more concert directive, okay? Because that's really what we're talking about here at Touring Music Tech. We're talking about getting involved in the music aspect of touring, because there are other aspects of touring. There are the theater side of touring. There's the corporate side of touring. A friend of mine worked with a company that when they were revealing the new BMW X5 car, they would take that car, build a show around it, and for like 6 weeks, a week at a time, take it to all these major cities to showcase the car. So there's different types of touring. So we're talking about music tours here, okay? The stage manager is someone literally that manages the schedule of the day, the local crew, and the actual movement that goes on the stage, and the loading docks. Sometimes the show is big enough to have 2 stage managers, where you'll have a stage manager that manages the stage and a stage manager that manages the trucks at the loading dock. It's a lot of movement sometimes. When I toured with Justin Bieber, we had 26 semi-trucks. That's a lot of movement. Your truck drivers, obviously, a very integral, important part of that. When you're a stagehand or local crew, you will be working hand in hand with the truck drivers. The drivers are the ones that will oftentimes pack the truck with you and secure their loads, okay? So you will be working hand in hand with truck drivers. Riggers. Riggers are the ones that hang the motors in the ceiling. And they, as a local crew, actually, you have an opportunity to work as a local crew rigger. It's something that's a kind of a specialty, one step up from a stagehand. It's a specialty local position that you could move into. It's a very high-paid position because it's a dangerous job, but they climb up in the roofs of these venues, these arenas and such, and they hang motors and drop motors from the ceiling so all of you audio and lighting and video people can attach your gear and have it rise above the stage. So riggers are important. The production manager obviously manages the entire production, and it staffs it and oversees everything and makes sure people are doing what they need to do, as well as are provided with what they need. You also have your lighting team. The lighting team consists of quite a few positions within the lighting team. There's the LD, the lighting designer, the lighting operator. You've got your lighting techs. There's also the dimmer technician. These are all just terms I want to throw out there to you so you can kind of put them in your mind because you're new at this. And so it's important for you to just kind of be made aware of the amount of career paths that are actually available to you. The reason why this matters is because when you think, well, I want to do events for a living, you think audio, lighting, and video, right? I mean, for the most part, that's probably what you think. Most people don't realize that there are all of these other positions that are needed to put on a show. With Bieber, that one again, that tour, we had 175 people in that organization that we would take all around the world, actually. 150 of them were crew. And let me just tell you, most of them were not just audio, lighting, and video. There were all the rest of these positions, okay? So it's important to understand that these are opportunities for you to follow. The audio team consists of the front of house engineer, which is the sound that the audience hears, the monitor engineer, which is the sound that the stage performers hear. Then you've got the wireless tech. Sometimes on those big shows, you have a person that's literally there just coordinating the wireless frequencies because there's an abundant amount of frequencies that really need wrangling. You've got the stage tech or the monitor tech, which is the audio technician that's actually helping you facilitate the patching of the stage and the plugging up of all the audio equipment. So there's also the audio techs that fly the speakers and the PA, right? There's a lot involved in the audio team. The video team is another aspect where you've got the camera operators, you've got the projectionists. Sometimes there's projectionists that literally just work on the projectors and the folding screens, which is a dying specialty. Some of these newer generation of video engineers are not learning the old school projectors, but here's the thing, is in that opportunity, there are always what's called IMAG projectors, which are on the sides of the stage. They're always flown up, and there's always going to be a need for projectionists, at least for quite some time now. And so LED technicians are another one, media server operators, video directors, video engineers. So there's a lot of little pathways even within the specialty. Staging, actually I'm going to blend staging and automation on this one because staging is literally the carpenters that build all of these stage decks and stuff, but some of these stages are incredibly huge. When I was on the Ariana Grande tour, we had a 4-story stage. 4 stories, huge things. There was all of these movements, and the automation team also was involved in the automated movements of some of these big, huge set pieces. Like Ariana used to fly on this big cloud across the arena, or a chandelier. Like these require experts that operate these things. And to be honest with you, these are not positions that you typically go to a school for. Audio, lighting, video, yes, you can certainly leverage that education to that next level. But some of these positions require you just to be made aware, to go in and learn the skill from the experts that are doing it. You know, there's not necessarily schools for these things, but they're so integral, and more and more and more and more. Pyrotechnics, obviously, pyro is an option for you if that's something that you wanted to tour in. There are a lot of firework companies and stuff. If you ever wanted to do pyro, by the way, how to find one of those would be to go to a fireworks show. Look at the firework company trucks and stuff like that, and most of the time, those companies, some of them are actually ones that we use for touring. But either way, you can get in there locally with your firework company, gain a little bit of experience, and then Google touring pyrotechnics company and say, hey, I worked at a local firework company in Tampa. I'm interested in touring pyrotechnics, and they would probably take you on. Okay? Backline, which is what I did for a really long time. I've actually done tour management, production management, stage management, and backline, but backline is where I got my specialty. Backline is all the instruments on stage. So drums, keys, guitars, bass, these are the technicians that set up and maintain all the gear. Things that I do, like right now, I'm name dropping a lot in this program. This is bad, but I can't help it. This is just the people that I work with. Like right now, I'm a guitar tech, and specifically, I am Nick Jonas's guitar tech from the Jonas Brothers. I work with Jonas Brothers and Nick, and I just take care of his guitars. Like literally, I restring and set up and maintain. I build pedal boards and racks and amps and all of that stuff for these artists. So there's careers in that. I've been a drum tech. In fact, when I was with Ariana Grande, I was the drum, keyboard, and DJ tech. And so, and obviously this is stuff that you go to school for, right? This is stuff that you learn on the job and that you grow into, okay? And then tour manager is another position that you can do on the road, which is somebody that handles all of the admin, payroll, hotels, buses, logistics, things like that, HR, if you will. And then there's some other support role positions, merchandisers, caterers, there's bus drivers, there's sometimes makeup and wardrobe. I remember one time we even had a tanner on the road, like literally somebody giving somebody spray tans on the road. I'm not joking. It's a thing. But I just wanted to share all of that with you to really impress upon you the abundant amount of opportunities. Can you see how many opportunities that are there that you might not learn about in some of these formal settings that don't even have definitive pathways to them? And I was so blown away by the amount of opportunities available that didn't have a, hey, go to this school and then you can apply for this company, right? There's no backline school, there's no tour manager school, right? Pyro and automation. But now you know that there is more than just what you're learning here, okay? There's more opportunities. Now, what you're learning here in this program can actually be leveraged into any and all of these things. There's a saying that's like, it's easier to get a gig when you have a gig. In other words, let's just say, like my friend that with Chris Isaac that has an audio degree, his intention was to go do audio. Well, once when he actually gets into the industry using his audio degree to get in the door, it was lighting that really pulled his interest. It was lighting that he was really mostly passionate about. And so even if you were to take this knowledge and get this knowledge to the next level, you could absolutely start making your way towards any of those things. Okay? All right, so this is very important. It's a small world. You will see them again. So remember, what are we doing here? We're creating a touring career. Well, I'll just tell you this. When you go on tour, man, your world gets way smaller. Like, what I mean by that is when I grew up in Villa Rica, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, man, I hadn't really traveled much at all. But my first tour, in 6 months, I literally went to almost all 50 states and a few provinces in Canada. Now, fast forward 20 years of doing this, I've got friends all over the world. I don't really know many places that I haven't been to be honest with you. And the thing is I see a lot of the same people over and over and over again. Like, you will see them again. And in the concert business, in the music business, the event business, it's a relationship game. It is a relationship game. People will remember you. They'll remember what you said. Maybe they won't remember you sometimes specifically, but they'll remember your stagehand company that you worked with. I've done this as a touring person where I'm going, oh, where are we tomorrow? Chicago, local 2. Oh, gosh. Got to deal with those guys again. Gosh, But on the micro to that, there's been like times where, I've had some amazing moments and some amazing times to where I can show back up to that city and be like, hey, what's up, y'all? Man, it's been too long. Hugs, right? Like, you will see these people again. And, man, you don't know where your opportunity is going to come from. I remember I was a young guitar tech, and I was like my first tour, and I was set up next to a keyboard tech at the time for the band that we were opening up with. And I was like a teenager. And apparently I had made an impression on this person because now it was like 8 years later, I see this guy on another gig and he goes, hey, weren't you that little young guitar tech guy, and he's like, I just wanted to tell you, man, like I always was impressed by you and your enthusiasm. I was like, really? That's so nice. And now we switch each other gigs. Like we play off each other. We give each other gigs these days, you know? So even 8 years later, you will see them again. So just because you're starting as a stagehand now and you think you're at the entry level, you are planting seeds relationship-wise and communication-wise. Because if you're touring, you're going to be seeing these people again and again. Make sense? Cool. All right. Gaining experience and paying dues, right? Like what they say, you can't Google experience. You can't Google experience because the reality is you have to go put in the work. And so something that I did every single time on gigs is I raised my hand to do the hard stuff every single time. Like anytime the stagehand steward would say, hey, who wants to load the trucks? Kenny will do it. Who wants to pull heavy copper feeder cable in a muddy festival? I'll do it. Every time. I didn't care. I wanted that stuff. I wanted to really get the necessary experience. I wanted to really show to myself and show to the people that I wanted to grow, that I wasn't there just to do the paycheck. I wasn't there just to get the free t-shirt. I wasn't there just to eat the catering or to do just a cool gig. I was there to grow. I was there to get on tour. And so there is a bunch of opportunity that no one wants to do. That's the stuff that I would recommend you do so you can get moved along with your getting your experience and your dues. Because what happens is when you're the one that's volunteering for that stuff, when the good gigs come around, the coveted ones where it's like they only need 1 or 2 or 3 stagehands and it's the top gigs, they're going to call you because you were the one. You were the one that was willing. You were the one that was willing to contribute and not just complain like most of them. And you'll find a lot of that stuff. So it's not difficult to stand out to get the next level opportunity because that's what you want. You want to be able to pay your dues and get opportunities to grow. You want the next level opportunities, and you will be getting those opportunities through people, through relationships. And so step up and get your experience and pay your dues. I forgot. You are your own business. This is, dudes, I was 19 years old in this picture. If you want to know, I'm about to turn 40. But I was 19 years old. That was me shooting a spotlight. If you look on this side of the spotlight, those little levers right there, that's from a Gladiator 3 spotlight. They don't even use those really much anymore. Those huge freaking spotlights. But there I was. And something that's powerful to understand is, as a freelancer, you are your own business, right? Like literally you're your own business. However, as an employee, if you can look at yourself and treat yourself like you're your own business, man, what does that allow you to do? That allows you to bring your own level of standards to the work. Like, you don't have to do just what's asked of you. You can actually do more than what's asked of you because it's your business. You care, right? Like, the manager might set some expectations and you go, yeah, but I'm more capable. So bring your capacity, right? You can bring your own level of standards, your own levels of quality to the work, right? Because you are your own business. Understand that if you can treat yourself like your own business, it'll also allow you to disconnect from some of the silliness that you just cannot help. You know, how many times have I seen, and you've probably seen this too, where you feel like you know more than your managers? You feel like you could probably do it a better way than them, right? When you're your own business, it won't matter. You can be like, okay, cool, I'm going to do the best I can in my world, and that's not going to affect me because I don't work for them. I work with them. It's a big difference. And it's a mindset shift. That's all it is. And you shift your mindset to think that you work with somebody, not for somebody, you will empower yourself to care way beyond just getting a paycheck. This is how people succeed, by the way, at every industry. This is how they do it. They stop thinking about the paycheck. They start thinking about the mission and how they can actually bring their best selves to the day. That's it. And every artist, every tour company, every stagehand company, every company has a mission, has a purpose that they want to follow by. And so if you treat yourself like a business and have your own purpose, your own mission, and you can complement that, man, you will be presented opportunities beyond belief. It's crazy. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get opportunities at every step of the way so we can get on tour, right? And so at this point, when you can start to bring your best to the work, then you'll be able to actually get the opportunities that coincide with that. So next thing is networking and social media. So let's assume that you're working as a stagehand and you want to like show what you're doing, and it's important to show what you're doing, but there's a level to this. There's a level of pride and vanity. Okay, it's said, and I actually talked about this today in with my coaching students. But I talked to them today about the difference of pride coming before the fall, right? Pride and vanity. The reason why this matters, and I'll show you here in a second, is it's important to be prideful so you can let people know, like, hey, I'm proud to load these trucks or pull this heater or get to work with this stagehand company. But vanity is where you're showing the artist, where you're like, hey, I'm working for this artist today, right? Like, it's not the case. You're not working for the artist. You're working with the stagehand company, and you're crossing the line because now that you're behind the scenes, now that you're backstage, now that you're part of the event, no longer can you be fanatical. You certainly can be a fan, but you can't be a fanatical. You can't bring that fanaticism to the work, because there's a line to cross there. And so when it comes to social media, it's important to share what you're doing, because this is what I like to call your social resume, is a track record of what you're doing and what you're interested in. Because these days, unlike back when I was starting, we didn't have this before. But now it's such a powerful tool, and most people just consume it. But if you can use it to showcase your resume in such a way that it shows your passion, your development of your career, your understanding of the work, start posting those things that you're proud of, because that will leave trace that you're everything that you're saying that you are. Because when you reach out to these companies, these touring companies or these local companies, they might ask you, hey, can I see your social media? I mean, why wouldn't they? It allows them to actually see you. It allows them to see your interests, and now they can. They certainly can. And if you don't want to show it to them, then maybe that they get a judgment in a certain way. So you can use it or you won't, or you don't have to, but the best way to use it is to be proud and not vain, to be a fan and not fanatical, and to be a fan of yourself. As far as networking on social media, here's what happens. When you start to change your cover photo and you're about, and it says, I'm a stagehand, or I'm a local crew in Tampa or Clearwater, right? Audio engineering at stage production at Pinellas Tech, right? You start to assume that position. It validifies you. You start to post some pictures of your class or some of the things that you're learning, or maybe you're breaking open one of those consoles or a light or a camera or a media server, and you're showing that. It's track record. It's track record. It's proof that you're doing this as a career, as an industry, as a development part of your career. And so when you reach out, show them. And they're going to look at the 10, 12 posts and go, oh, wow, no, this person is what they say they are. It helps you. And another way, too, it helps you with networking is in those groups, the stagehand groups, the local crew groups, the audio groups, the lighting groups, the video groups, the backline groups, you see where I'm going here. There's a lot of interest groups that are relative to this industry, and everybody that's in events are going to be in these groups. Well, it allows you to send a friend request or comment, and what do? They look at your profile, and they say, well, who is this person sending me a friend request? Oh, okay, cool. They're audio, lighting, like they're in the industry. They're connected, right? It immediately validifies you. So on your pathway, this is just another tool to help you eventually get on tour. So we got our first gig. This was actually one of my buses were parked at Red Rocks in Colorado. By the way, if you've ever wanted to tour and get to go see Red Rocks in Colorado, you will get to. It's one of the most beautiful venues in the country, and I've probably been there, I don't know, a dozen times. It's really cool. But your first gig and how to act on the road. Now, we're far down the line with this at this point. Like, we've already figured out that, okay, we want to do this. We want to travel the world and set up concerts for a living. We want to work with artists in whatever capacity. Like, we're going to tour. We already know that, like, we know the who we know. We know how to get started. I mean, it's easy. We just Google our city and Google the staging companies or audio companies or lighting companies, production companies, and start getting that entry-level experience. We don't need to know anybody else. We don't need any experience currently because we're getting some. We're going to progressively get some. We're going to progressively put ourselves out there, and then we put ourselves out there to the touring companies, because that's it. That's how you do it. You take your local experience that you've built up. You take your school, you take your local crew, your stagehand experience, your local production experience, and then you go back to the Google machine and you say, touring audio companies, or touring backline, or touring video, or touring lighting companies. And you are going to find companies, everyone from PRG. I hesitate saying names of companies because even in my book, there was one of the companies, which was the largest company at the time, VER, they don't even exist anymore. They don't exist anymore. They were bought out, and now there's somebody else and somebody else. And so really use Google on this, okay, because there's an abundant amount of them. In fact, one of the top video companies right now, Nighthawk, they've got some of the biggest tours in the world. They've been around for 2 years. 2 years. They were just born 2 years ago, and now they're one of the top video companies. So use Google to position yourself. But let's just say that you wanted to be a touring video person to get your first gig. What do? You take your video experience and you reach out to Nighthawk, for instance, or any of the other video companies, PRG Video, whatever, and you reach out and apply for that entry-level position. Now, it's entry-level to them, next level for you. Make sense? Cool. So you got it. You're on tour. You booked your first gig. Now, how are you supposed to handle all of this? Now, I go into this in the book, and I'm going to share it with you, but it's a pretty advanced stuff, right? Like, we're on tour now, and I know that you guys are learning about this, but assuming that you got your first tour, what you want to understand is you're living on a tour bus with 12 other people. Well, 11 other people. There's 12 bunks, 11 other people. Unless you get lucky and you get what's called condo bunks, which are like stacks of 2, not 3, but I'll get there. And so anyways, there's less people on the condo bunks. But let's just say that you got your first tour and you get to tour on a bus. Now, on the bus, let me see something. Okay. On the bus here is, if you see, underneath the bus, there are these doors. They're called bays. Under the bay is where you put your luggage, all right? When you go up onto a bus in the driver's area, what's called the cockpit, there is a door or a curtain that you'll go to into an area called the front lounge. And the front lounge of the bus is where the hang is. It's couches, and there's a little kitchenette and a bathroom area. Just beyond the front lounge is what's called the bunkhouse of a bus. It's roughly in this area right here. That's called the bunkhouse of the bus, and usually the bunkhouse has 12 bunks, like 4 stacks of 3, or there's 4 stacks of 2, which are called condo bunks. So condo bunks are just 2 stacks where you can actually sit up in them, or you have coffin bunks, which are like you lay all the way down in them, right? And you can't really sit up. Everything's all private with a curtain. You have a little pouch for your stuff. You have plugs and stuff. Some of them have TVs, which we've done away with that stuff anymore because it gets in the way. But the bunkhouse is the place to be quiet and considerate. Again, you're living on a bus with 11 other people, so we'll get there as far as that goes. And then the back of the bus is called the back lounge, which is oftentimes the party hang for a lot of these tours. It's like where people go to hang and do the thing with the thing, okay? I have to be very discreet. Right, Jeff? Okay. All right, just making sure. I didn't know how far I could take it. Yes, I know that there isn't like this crazy rock and roll party life anymore, but there still is to some degree. But how do you act on a bus with 11 other people? Well, remember something. You live and work with these people. Not only are you going to wake up the next day and go in the venue and work with them, but you're going to come back the next day on the bus and be right there with them as well. And so it's important to understand, to be considerate. Clean up after yourself, right? Clean up after yourself. Pick up after yourself. Man, I have literally been on buses where 50-year-old men are leaving their crap everywhere. It's like, it blows your mind. I'm like, do you live like this at home? They probably do. They probably do. And so if you really want to have a good tour experience on your first gig, is to just Keep your stuff tidy. Put your backpack, if there's what's called a junk bunk, usually sometimes if they've got less crew than bunks, they'll give one of the bunks as what's called a junk bunk, where everybody can kind of put their backpacks up in there so you don't have to have it in your bunk. Sometimes the shoes, everybody has different rules about where to put your shoes. Sometimes you can line your shoes up along the bunkhouse hallway. Sometimes they're in the back lounge. Sometimes you have to put your shoes in your bunk. Every bus is different. Every bus is a little different. If you ever have specialty food items that you want, you could write your name on it, put it in the fridge. I was working with this one band, Clint Black, this country singer, and it was all older dudes. Like, I think maybe the youngest guy was like 55 years old, the band guys. And I used to like bring, because I'm a health guy, right? Like I would bring some of my stuff, I'd write my name on it, put it in the fridge. I'd come out and they'd be eating on my stuff. Like, what the heck? They were like, oh, dude, thank you. And I was like, I wrote my name on that. They were like, yes, thank you. It allowed us to thank you. You know, it was basically them giving me the blessing to eat my stuff. They were just like, look, man, it's ours. So everything is different. Sorry, I didn't read that. I didn't see it. Hygiene, yes. Oh, okay. Jeff wants me to bring up hygiene. Yeah. So here, yeah, that's another point too. Is Jeff was talking about hygiene on the bus, right? Well, first of all, let me talk about the water on the bus. The waters it's non-potable water, so you're not gonna run your toothbrush under the sink, right? Because I mean, this is sewage water. I mean, it's non-potable anyways, and so you want to like brush your teeth with bottled water. No pooping on the bus, or the famous saying, don't shit on the bus. And the reason why is because you'll clog the toilet, it will ruin the system and cost thousands of dollars, and the driver will be unhappy. Paper products, don't be throwing paper products in the toilet. Feminine products, put them in the trash can. Things like that. Artist coaches, they sometimes have what's called a grinder. You can pretty much figure out what that means, right? A grinder in the toilet, okay? But still, even if a bus has a grinder, don't poop on the bus, okay? Keep yourself clean. You know, at the end of the night, there's an opportunity to shower, okay? When you finish loading out and you're sweaty, quickly shower and get on the bus. There are times where, like, you can't shower and you got to deal with that, but, like, man, shower. Because it's not just about you, it's about respecting the next person. It's also you're going to be in your sheets and stuff, and usually on the road, your driver will clean the sheets, but once a week. You know what I mean? Like, clean up after yourself, clean yourself, and you'll have a better experience on the road. Obviously, you're not going to want to sit there and using a bunch of perfumes and sprays, and just have some common sense, but I just want to say that common sense is not always common practice, especially on the road. Common sense is not always common practice, especially on the road. It's blown my mind sometimes, the just complete disregard from some people on these buses. It's wild. The television, by the way, there's a TV and sometimes gaming consoles and stuff like that. I don't partake in the gaming, but any of that stuff's free to use. It's usually a joint team effort to figure out what we're watching, things like that. Sometimes we'll sit there and watch movies, or sometimes we'll watch, whole seasons of Family Guy or something. It just depends on the flavor of the crew in general and the people in general. The bunkhouse is always a place to kind of keep quiet, so you can go and read or whatever. I read and go and do that type of thing. And then, like I said, the back lounge is usually for the people that are the hangers or the smokers or something. You don't typically smoke on a bus. I do want to point that out. You're not supposed to smoke on a bus. You're not supposed to smoke on the bus. However, the driver sometimes allows that leniency up in what's called the jump seat, which is where the driver sits. You can go up there, sit with the driver, look at the world passing by. Sometimes they let you smoke out there, depending. And then finally, I do want to say, if you did have to poop on the bus, if you really needed to poop and you can't go on the bus, first of all, go to the driver. The driver will stop, but this is going to get a little gross, Jeff. But because this is the realities of touring, guys, like you're living on a tour bus, I just want to point that out there. Is what's called brown bagging it. You might have to layer the toilet with a plastic bag, do your business, tie it up, put it in another bag, and tell the driver, hey, now we need to throw this in the trash can, because you might not be able to stop. I've seen people have to tell the driver to stop, run around to the back of the bus, between the bus or the trailer, and do it there. Like, it's the road. It's the freaking road. um, then there's what's called bus stock. By the way, bus stock is like a general list of items. You can request some items that you want: peanut butter, jelly, bread, chips, beef jerky, certain sodas and drinks and stuff like that. Your bus will be stocked. Some of these items can be requested. Alcohol, lots of alcohol and all that stuff. I don't drink, but if you drink, you can drink on the buses. And all of that's available to you as well. So that's the bus part of it. Okay, before I move on. Okay, that's the bus part of it. The actual gig part of it, right? Like, what do you do when you first show up in the venue? Like, you've been hired to be the audio tech, but you just like, they don't sit there and say, okay, you're the audio tech, so here's what your day is going to look like. It just doesn't happen. What's going to happen is you might get the opportunity to prep your show, but really what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to show up there early, get the lay of the land, make sure you're ready to work, make sure you know where your catering is, make sure you check in with your lead, and just follow their lead. Because what you're doing actually on a tour when you first start is you're creating your job. You're creating your flow. You're creating your position and your normalcy in the craziness of it all. Okay, and so it's your duty to go in there and create that. You're not going to typically have your audio lead or your lighting lead or your video lead or stage manager telling you, okay, now do this. Okay, great, you done that? Now do this. It's like, it doesn't happen. You have to take complete ownership of your role when you get on tour. So when you go in and get checked in, make sure you're very cognizant about getting checked in and then going in there and actually creating your role, knowing that you are putting it together relative to the other departments. Also, you're going to want to understand where you are in the bigger scheme of things, meaning as a backline tech, like let's just say I was drum teching. Well, I know for a fact in the bigger picture of things that my drums have to be set up on the riser, right? The rolling riser. Well, that means the set carts have to get the riser set up for me to set the drums up. But if I have like guitars and drums and keyboards and all this different stuff to set up in my world, but I'm also cognizant of the audio team and their role, well, here's what that looks like. That means I would go, well, if I have to set up keys, guitars, bass, and drums, but the audio team has so much work to do wiring up the drum kit, I'm going to go set the drum kit up first, and then I'll go do the rest of my work, because that allows them to go ahead and keep moving forward. So you want to be very cognizant. It might be an inconvenience to me because I might have to move some stuff and push some stuff out of the way that doesn't feel great, but at least I'm understanding that I can do my part that helps them directly. Does that make sense? Same thing when it comes to lighting and video and all these other areas. You know for a fact that if you can just pay attention and understand generally, not just your role, but how production goes and where you fit in the bigger picture, it'll allow you to not get your cable trampled or not, place your world here when they go, why'd you set up there? We're gonna be coming through here, things like that. It's just this little thing of being aware, and that's why having a background of complete local production and stagehand work is very valuable, because it opens you up to the bigger picture and not just your micro role in things. It allows you to be a lot more respectful and actually have a really great experience on the road. So there's some more stuff that I dive into the book, where I talk about like hotel rooms and a variety of stuff that I kind of don't want to share right now. So if you're interested in a little bit more of those off tour or off workday dynamics, let me grab a copy of that book. All right, setting your value and your worth, okay? Now, how do you know what you're worth and how you should get paid on tours? Well, everything is different. Our industry is not standardized, okay? And it can't be standardized. As much as the unions would love it, they can't do it because there's so many levels to this. There's so many levels to this. There's baby bands that are in white 16-passenger vans pulling trailers, right? Playing festivals and clubs and things like that, all the way up to, the big, huge tours like with Bieber, where we had not just 26 trucks, but we had, was it like 21 buses of crew and bands, and now there's a lot of people, And so, and everything is different, everything is relative. The bigger the tour gets, the more roles there are for the different departments. The smaller the bands, the less roles and the more responsibility that is required, but the work is different because the venues are smaller and things like that. And so as far as setting your worth and value, here's the way I like to do it. If I apply for an audio or lighting or video company or staging company or something like that, they typically have a pay scale. It's pretty built in. They know what to expect. They know what they're budgeting the client or billing the client rather. They know what they're invoicing the client, and they know what they can pay you. So they may come to you and say, well, it's going to be X. Now, I just want to tell you the pay scales in some genres like country music or Christian music, for instance, they do what's called day rates a lot. And day rates could be anywhere from $150 a day all the way up to $700 a day, where you get paid the days that you work. Or you might be in certain situations like now when I work with the Jonas Brothers, I get paid a weekly salary. Weekly salaries could be anywhere from my first tour, which was a van and trailer tour. I made $500 a week. Okay, which hey, $2,000 a month at the time. We didn't have all the inflation that we have, so $2,000 a month at the time to do my thing. I was not mad at that. Plus, you're not spending it. You're not spending that money. You're gone. What are you going to spend it on? It just banks up. All the way up to, even me as a tour manager, I've made $4,500 a week, $5,000 a week, okay? I know this sounds like a lot of money. A tour management role, by the way, is 7 days a week and completely consuming. So you do not own your life. That $4,500, you're like, oh, it's not even enough itself, So it just depends. But you can see that it's so wide range. It all is relative to the tour, the show, the artist, and all that stuff. So it's very easy if you're entering into a company because they'll tell you. If you're a freelancer, it's up to you. If it's up to you, how do you negotiate it? Well, here's what I like to do. I like to go to the production or tour manager that I'm negotiating with, and they'll say, well, what is your rate? What would you like to be paid? Right? What's your rate? And I like to say, well, I have a minimum, but what's in the budget? I have a minimum, but what's in the budget for the position? Because if you don't know, it allows them to bring back a starting point. Usually a PM or a TM is not going to come at the top of that starting point. They're going to have their budget that they've already allotted for the position. It's somewhere in that window, and they're typically going to start negotiations low. Hey, if they tell you it's $500 a week and you're okay with that because of where you're at, take it. Just be like, okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That sounds perfect. But if you feel like it's just not enough because you know your worth, that God, if I took it for 500, but God, I would still be struggling. I could really use 700 a week. Tell them. Because they want to make sure that they get the person that's not worrying about the money. Because once you stop worrying about the money, you can focus on the position and you can focus on the contribution. Contribution or compensation always follows contribution, always. And so if you don't think about the money, then you can focus on contributing to the show and what you're being hired to do. So it starts in the negotiation phase. It's sometimes easier to negotiate your rate on the way in than to try to get a raise while you're in there. And sometimes people just want raises for no extra effort just because. And it's like, well, that's just not the way this works. It's a value exchange. There's a level of value exchange for the compensation. So if you don't know, throw it back at them. What is in your budget? And they'll usually tell you. And if you're not happy with it specifically, ask. Don't be afraid to ask because it's about you knowing your worth. I could really use 700 or I could really use 1,000. Is there any way we can get there with that? And they may say, you know what? Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We really want you. I've done this. Sometimes there's salary gigs that offer retainers, meaning on some of these bigger tours, and it's few and far between, these are coveted gigs, but this can happen where you can get a salary, and then because the tour might last for 2 years, but there's some chunks where there's no work, there might not be a run or a show in 1 or 2 months, they retain you. They literally give you half your paycheck just to not go take any other gig. They'll literally pay you half of your salary just to wait. Pretty cool. Those gigs are coveted. Then there's something else called per diem. Okay, per diem is important to understand too, is because per diem is usually cash. Sometimes they add it to the paycheck these days, which is kind of annoying, but because cash is starting to seemingly go away, which whatever, I get it. But the cool thing about per diem is it's anywhere from the low end is like 25 a day. The standard is about 35 across the board, 50 a day for some of the pop gigs and stuff like that. And then that's in the U.S. And then international, it can be anywhere from $75 a day to $150 a day if it's Japan or something. And the reason what this per diem is for is literally it's supposed to be you using this money to feed yourself on days off, okay? But you'll get paid per diem. I mean, sometimes it's structured. Sometimes an artist is like, well, we only pay per diem on days off. Sometimes it's like, well, we pay per diem every day you're gone, which is most of them. But whatever your per diem set is, you'll get this on top of your paycheck. You might get 500 extra bucks in a week on top of your paycheck to pay for food. Well, guess what? They stock the bus with a lot of food, and they feed you 3 times a day on show days. Well, 4, because there's after show food that they put on the bus for you to eat after show. I don't eat it, obviously. But my point is like, then you can take that per diem and smartly use it for something. And, you know, hey, don't get me wrong. I'll go out on a day off or sometimes go to dinners and really treat myself because you want to do that too, you know. But I'll sometimes use the money to maybe go on like Uber to a hike or something like that. Like really go and experience. One tour I didn't use any of my per diem. It was like a month and a half. I had enough per diem to buy a laptop, you know. And it was just like, oh, okay, cool. I got like $1,100 bucks. I'm going to go buy a laptop. And it was all money that was on top of the paycheck. So that's per diem. It's pretty cool. But hopefully that was helpful on setting your value and worth and negotiations if you get your first gig. Artist interaction and knowing your place. I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of dark up here. Can you see this guy? Look at that young fellow. I wasn't that young, actually. That's me back there behind Ariana. This was in Osaka in Japan. And basically what I want to talk about with this section here is, this is a hard one. And I've actually kind of revisited this one over the years, especially since I had an artist sing at my wedding. Let me explain. You're never friends with the artist when it comes to their business. You know, you might be friendly. You might have some amazing experiences that really get you close to an artist. But then, if something happens where they get in their own way of their business or you get in their own way of their business and they have to close up shop or let you go because you became a problem, this happens. I remember I was sitting on the bus. It was my first tour with Joe Nichols, this country singer. I'm a young guy, and I've been with Joe for a little over 2.5 years, and Joe brings me on the bus one day. And now, mind you, like I was at Joe's wedding. You know, it was like I was at his wedding, like, you know, I was friends with Joe, right? Friends with Joe Nichols. And so Joe brings me on the bus, and I'm sitting across from him, and he goes, Kenny, listen, man, like, whatever you can do to, like, skill up and be very, very hyper more valuable to me, like, I want you in my camp forever, man. I want you, like, whatever I can do, I don't care if you have to go to freaking get an audio engineering degree to where I can just take you around everywhere and you can be my guy. You know, I was already a stage guy, but he just wanted me deeper into the organization. He's telling me this because he likes me, right? I'm like, this is so nice. This is so cool. Like, I'm good. 2 weeks later, I get a call. Well, actually, it was a text from Joe. And he said, hey, Kenny, can you come down to soundcheck in Nashville? Well, at the time, I lived in Atlanta. I'd lived 3.5 hours away from Nashville. I used to drive every week for 4 years to catch the bus. That's dedication, by the way. So I was like, okay, cool. So I start driving to Nashville. I make it there to Soundcheck, which is the facility where we stored all our gear and stuff, and I saw both the buses backed up and the trailers were down. I was like, do we have a gig or rehearsals or something? And Joe brings us in this big circle and he goes, guys, we're going to have to stop touring. For the next 3 months, I don't know, maybe longer, but I got to check myself into rehab. He's like, I'm a severe addict. I can't get control of myself, and I'm shutting it all down. I was like, but what? I was like, well, aren't we friends? You know, didn't you just tell me that we're going to be this forever? And so anyways, even when it's the artist's issue, getting in his own way. You're never friends with the artist. You're friendly and stuff. So that happened, and then I was, oh shoot, what am I going to do next? Because of the relationships and all the things that I was just talking to you guys about, I was able to get another tour opportunity. But then at the same time, I told you all the story of Amos Lee came to sing at my wedding just because, And so here's the real truth with this. Like with Ariana, for instance, my wife was one of her dancers. I've hung out at her house and her birthday party, and like I know Ariana like that, but at the end of the day, not friends with her. We're friendly, we know each other because it's a business. It is a multi-million-dollar business. And so it's important to understand that you can't take offense when either they get in their own way or you rub them the wrong way. I've seen it before where it's like an artist might, tour manager friend of mine, bless his heart, sweetheart of a guy, artist wakes up one day, comes out in the front lounge, just like, mate, I don't feel your vibe. We're going to replace you. So it's just what it is, and so it's really important to understand now that like artists can be very alluring, they can be very attracting and magnetizing and charming and all of these things. But just remember your place. And especially with me as a guitar tech, and I work hand in hand with the people. On my cell phone right now, I have the cell phone numbers of a bunch of big stars, that I could text, but I wouldn't, because I just worked with them. And that was another thing. Remember what I just said? I worked with them, not for them. And if you can understand your role as a business owner and yourself, you can realize that you work with them, not for them. It's a mindset thing, and it also will come out into an action and a communication thing. So know your place. And it's not just a job, it is a dang career. This is actually me, was this last year? I worked with Bon Jovi. Oh gosh, let me pick that name back up. Oh, here we go. No, seriously, I worked with Bon Jovi last year, and was it last year? And I just wanted to use this picture to show you, like, this is 20 years into this. I'm very fortunate to have been able to build this as a career and tour as a career. But what I want to impress upon you is now that you're empowered, now that you know that you can literally break in, you can take Jeff's class and go break into the local production scene. You can then leverage that experience to the touring realm and get on tour. Now you know how to interact and how to bring yourself, your best self, to the gig so you can really set yourself up for touring crew career success. Just know that like you can actually do this for multiple decades and really create an incredible life on the road. This is not just some job that's paying your bills. It is a lifestyle career. You literally live where you work, you work where you live, and it is absolutely a career. I like to think of the difference of a job and career is like that kind of business mindset that I was telling you guys. It's kind of like if you go, a job is like if you go and apply for a company, they're hiring you to see if you're a good fit for their mission, right? Their company. Well, if you're building a career, you're also hiring them to see if they're a good fit for your career vision. Meaning you can take this touring career and actually take it in a direction that fulfills you and an incredible opportunity to create a life experience that you never really realize until you actually take the reins of this thing and go. If you can really focus on building a career at this, you'll have the opportunity to get to travel all over the world, set up music concerts for a living, become a touring music tech yourself. So hopefully that was helpful. Let's connect. Backstage Crew Careers is our Instagram. We're also on the TikTok, and we just started a Facebook page. I'm just trying to share more of this education and really empower you to take this knowledge. You can buy the book on Amazon, or the other book that I have, the second book is Stagehand 101. You can buy. We also have a touring crew career coaching program called Crew Coach, where we help people develop their careers, get them on tour, and help them get successful. Because even at the top levels of touring, guys, there's a lot of these things to consider at every step of the way on how you bring yourself to the work, how you show up as a business, how you communicate, how you really just care about what you're doing, really injecting your passion beyond the paycheck. That's what we're actually doing here. It's a real trade. As I mentioned before, you can win Grammys and Emmys and CMA awards as a crew person. We've got trade shows. We've got conferences specific to touring. It's a real trade, and it's a real career that you can build. So let's connect so we can help each other out. Cool. Thank you, Crew Coach members. I appreciate you guys. Hope y'all enjoyed the live stream. And I'll see y'all on Tuesday's coaching session. And until then, go get them.